Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and I got off the phone with the official father of the Digital Asset Investor channel, who is my father, this morning, and he asked me if I would do a video where I covered who owns Ripple. In other words, who are the investors in Ripple, the stock. So I decided I would do that, and I did do that, and I'm going to present them all to you right now. Not all, but the significant ones, the ones that I can show you how it all ties into what is going to happen and what is happening and why it's a big deal for you. So it's going to take me, this is going to be a long video, but you're just going to have to deal with it. But I'm going to start off by showing you coin market cap. The market looks like it's inching up a little bit this morning. We're up 3.5% on XRP. It's about to cross 24 cents. And so that's all I really wanted to say about that. Okay, now, before I cover who owns Ripple, the venture capitalists and all the people that own Ripple right now, I want to let you hear, not from me, but I want you to hear it from, I've played this before, but this is what we have to get established up front. There's a difference between ownership in Ripple, the company, and ownership in XRP. I believe, and ownership in the company is one thing, ownership in XRP is a different thing. Now, the way I think all of this plays out, I believe that even when Ripple goes IPO and is a public company, I believe that the XRP, the token, because of the massive use that's going to go on, I believe the token often is going to literally front run the investors that are investing in the stock. In other words, I think that the price of XRP could very well, at many different times, go up and pass the value of the Ripple stock. The stock market does not price things in as fast as the crypto market, as fast as utility will. I believe that utility could be, just think about it this way. Let's say, I'm just throwing an example out there. Let's say that all of a sudden somebody like a huge bank, like a Bank of England, went live using on-demand liquidity. And I'm not saying they will. I'm just saying, what if a big institution all of a sudden went live? You could see a very fast increase in the pricing of XRP, and the stock would not necessarily reflect it that day. But I want you to hear, this is important, I want you to hear the investment thesis. The point of what I just said to you is that we're entering a new paradigm, and the paradigm is where you can invest, and Fidelity Labs lays it all out for you in their investment thesis, and Fidelity Labs is where they hatch all of their technology ideas, okay? But we're entering a new paradigm where when the internet came about, you could not invest in HTTP. You had to invest in companies that were building on it. The new paradigm is you can invest in the protocol itself. The XRP, the protocol, you can actually invest in this. And that's what's exciting about all this. But don't take my word for it. Listen to this, and he even mentions Ripple. You got to hear it, especially if you've never heard it.
Talk about the investment hypothesis. Now, if I was doing this a couple of years ago, the investment hypothesis would be talking about people on the so-called edge, millennials, people who are crypto anarchists who are really into this. But this has really changed, and we've seen this from our institutional clients, particularly on the family office end of things. People are becoming more sophisticated as they realize and understand and go deep that there is this new digital asset that cannot be changed, their investment potentials. Last year, Coinbase did $1 billion in revenue. Circle did about $2 billion every month in trades. And so we're now in an era of not just talking about the investment hypothesis, but companies are building real business models off this. So what is the investment hypothesis? I want to go back a little to what I talked about with the web. With the web, we invested in companies that built off these protocols. Now, likewise, if it was 1994 and I came to you and said, I have this incredible investment, it's called HTTP, you can buy into it, and any company that builds value off of it will impact the price of HTTP. First of all, you'd think I was crazy again, because what is HTTP? What is a protocol? But you would also not be able to do that. So instead, what we have in the internet era of investing is we try and invest in companies. Pets.com, not so good. Amazon, good. Google, good, etc. Well, what blockchain investing offers is the potential to flip this model. And instead of focusing on applications or companies building off applications off of protocols, you can invest in the protocol layer itself. So you can buy an Ethereum token in the hopes or thoughts or vision that there are going to be hundreds, maybe thousands of companies that are going to build new products and services off the Ethereum token, bringing back value to that token. This is one way to look at the investing hypothesis. I will say this is a very early industry, and another thing that we are doing here at Fidelity is building an investment research practice to try and value these so-called assets. It's quite complicated and quite different than valuing a traditional company. So what we've seen is a growing group led by Bitcoin, which you've probably all heard about. This chart is already out of date. This is quite a volatile asset class. But you see these other things that you may have heard of, Ethereum, Ripple, Dash, etc. And so there's this now proliferation in the space of projects and protocols which people are investing in.
I think you can pretty much get out of that. It's very obvious that Fidelity sees investment in the protocol as something that is going to be a big deal going forward. And he goes on to categorize them. There's going to be utility tokens and then store of value like Bitcoin they talk about. But he lays it all out here, okay? I wanted to show you that before I show you the owners in Ripple so that you understand these people that own Ripple are also the largest owners in XRP. And before I show you that, I want to show you one more thing. This is the XRP Rich List stats. Now, before I show you this, I want you to understand that people can have multiple wallets, but it gives us a good idea, general idea of how much you have to be in the top whatever percent of XRP holders. But there's a more interesting thing in this graph. Let's say you want to be in the top 1%. According to this, you've got to have around 73,000 XRP. Now, to be in the top 0.01%, you have to cross the around 746,000 XRP mark, all right? So that's not what I want you to be looking at. What I want you to look at is look how the people in these different groups have trended, okay? They've trended, kind of flatlined and even gone down in terms of the number of people in that percentage that own XRP. In other words, the 1% has kind of dropped off, and it's like there's a loss of faith. Well, here's the most important thing on this page, folks. Who has gained faith? That would be the top 0.01%. The very top of the holders of XRP in the world have increased their positions, folks. That's the way I read this. They've increased their position. And now I'm going to show you who those people are. The upper 0.01% are also the shareholders in Ripple. And for some reason, these guys think that XRP is something they need to be accumulating. All right, so let's go and look who owns Ripple, okay? This is from Ripple's webpage, and it only lists some of the investors in Ripple. And I'm going to go through these, and I'm going to show you any of them that I found anything interesting about who they were or anything like that. All right, here it shows these, and some of these will be covered, some won't. But anyway, you can see them here. All right, and then I went to, this is from SharesPost.com. For those of you that don't know, SharesPost.com, if you're an accredited investor, you can buy shares of Ripple right now, even before it goes public. I think you're still able to, but I think you have to be accredited, which means you have to be, I think, upwards of 250,000 show them upwards of 250,000 in assets or something like that. It may be 200, I don't remember. But anyway, they list the key investors here in Ripple. Now, I went one by one. I went to all of these just to see if there was anything interesting with any of these investors. So here we go. And I'll warn you, it's going to be a long one. Now, the first one we have here is AME Cloud Ventures. Now, here's what's interesting about AME Cloud Ventures, and then I'm going to go on to the next. AME Cloud Ventures is the venture fund led by Jerry Yang, who is the co-founder of Yahoo. So, the co-founder of Yahoo is an investor in Ripple, folks. That's the first headline here, if there's any headlines, okay? So, they are out in Silicon Valley, of course. They were there during the internet bubble. So, the CEO, if there were out of the dot-com boom, if there were 2 or 3 success stories, they would be Yahoo, Google, Amazon, eBay, these, okay? Yahoo was one of them. So we've got one of the guys from the dot-com boom who obviously thinks Ripple is a screaming buy. So he bought into Ripple. Let's see what we have next. Now we've got another guy. This is Andreessen Horowitz, who is an investor in Ripple. This is Marc Andreessen. Marc Andreessen. And for those of you that have seen me cover these before, even though I've covered some of this before, I'm covering some more companies today and some more tie-ins. If you've seen me cover this topic before, I'm doing a lot of this for newer people, including my dad, who's not newer, but he asked me to do it. Who's the official father of the Digital Asset Investor channel. But anyway, Marc Andreessen, he was one of the founders, right? Marc co-created the highly influential Mosaic internet browser and co-founded Netscape, which later sold to AOL for $4.2 billion. So this is his venture capital firm. So now we have 2, I guess Netscape is another one I forgot to mention from the dot-com boom. So you got 2 of the pioneers of the dot-com boom who see Ripple as maybe a potential second coming of the internet, or the first coming of the internet of value. Then you've got Blockchain Capital, which is one of the largest blockchain firms. Let me see if there was something from this guy that was interesting. Let me see if I had seen anything. He was a managing partner at this. He's from Fidelity Ventures. So this guy, I don't know that there was anything in particular that was interesting from these guys. Let me see if I see any names that jump out at me. But anyway, here's what I wanted to show you. The advisors to Blockchain Capital. Check this out. So, Mike Novogratz, who's also an investor in Ripple through the Galaxy Partners, and won't say the name Ripple. And you also have Charlie Lee, who is on this advisory board, who's the founder of Litecoin. Okay, let me see if there's anybody else worth mentioning. This is interesting. Royal Bank of Scotland. This is the CAO of the Royal Bank of Scotland. PayPal Ventures operating partner John Lund. Several interesting. Here's the Gavin Wood, co-founder of Ethereum, founder and CTO of Parity. So these guys from Ethereum and from Litecoin think that Ripple is a good place to invest. And then we have the CME Ventures, right? CME Ventures is all over this, right? And remember, this is the venture capital wing of the CME Group. The CME Group is where Miguel Baez, the head of XRP Markets, he was sent the year after the CME Ventures invests in Ripple. They send him to Ripple to be the head of XRP Markets. And he's also the same guy who said that his goal is for XRP to have the liquidity of a fiat currency like the Swiss franc, okay? That means trillions, if you don't already know. Let's see who else the CME is invested in. Axoni. This company is a big one I'm going to get into in another video. They're also backed by JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs. The digital asset is also backed by Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan. And then you can see down here they're invested in Ripple. So these guys obviously think that Ripple is a screaming buy, which in my opinion means that XRP is a screaming buy. Then you have this is called China Rock Capital Management, I believe. Then you got these guys. This guy's the general partner. His name's Ding. He's officially this, He was he worked as an analyst in capital market department at Goldman Sachs between 1993 and 1995. That's all I'm going to show you on that one. Well, then you've got the Founders Fund. And look who you have. You've got Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel is an entrepreneur and investor. He co-founded PayPal, led it as CEO, and took it public. He made the first outside investment in Facebook. I've told you before that Ripple will be Facebook on steroids. So the PayPal co-founder thinks that Ripple is a good investment. All right. And then, of course, I don't have to go any further than just showing you that Google Ventures is an early investor in Ripple as well. Okay? Now, let's move along. Then we've got Pantera. This is Pantera Capital. Dan Moorhead, he was with FX Options at Deutsche Bank in London. But this guy is also a major investor in Ripple. Moving along. Now we've got RRE Ventures. Now, I don't know much about this one, but I did think this guy was interesting. His name's James Robinson. He's the founder and general partner. He's the co-founder and partner at RRE Ventures. Let's see what else it says about him. He is a co-founder and director of Abra and a director of Camp, HYPR. Let's see what else, if any of these jump out. He's a board observer at BitPay and the Digital Currency Group, Digital Currency Group is also an investor in Ripple. We'll get to them in a minute. Before he started RRE, Jim and Stuart Elman helped co-found an in-stadium touchscreen ordering startup that proved to be about a decade too early. Previously, he worked at H&Q Venture Capital, JP Morgan and Company. See how all this stuff kind of comes together, folks? All right, let's look at some of his portfolio here. You got Abra, BitPay, Digital Currency Group, Ripple, Securrency, Ripple, I believe, no, not that one. Okay, these are some that he's exited from. So anyway, I think you get the picture. This guy knows what he's doing. Okay, now we have SBI Holdings. We've talked about that. Yoshitaka Kitao is the CEO. SBI Holdings they're the largest outside shareholder of Ripple. They formed SBI Ripple Asia. They've got about 10.5% of Ripple. And then I think they have like 8-point-something% of XRP is what I read. And then these guys went and formed SBI Ripple Asia and formed the Japanese Bank Consortium, which comprises 80% of the banks. And their whole goal with all of that is to make XRP the global standard. And that is directly from the CEO, Yoshitaka Kitao of SBI Holdings. All right. Now we've got this one, FinTech arm of SCB, Digital Ventures. Digital Ventures, a subsidiary of the Siam Commercial Bank, has invested in Ripple. And now what I'm going to show you is how this is all going to happen, folks. These banks that plan to use RippleNet and hopefully XRP for on-demand liquidity, they're starting with RippleNet and then they move on to ODL, okay? But I believe there's another part of the plan, and I can prove it, and that's that these banks are they're not just going to use RippleNet and then eventually move on to on-demand liquidity as regulations are worked out. They're also going to run the validator nodes, right? Each bank or government entity like the SEC or maybe the IMF, the World Bank, you're going to see these nodes from Ripple that are lighting up with all these banks. That's my prediction, okay? I already know of one of them, so I'm not just talking, this is not just a theory of mine. And I'm going to show you that one in a second. But first, I want to make this point. So first, a lot of these banks have invested in Ripple. And then after that, we see these types of articles. This is from Ripple in January 2020, an app for millions that runs on Ripple. Siam Commercial Bank, that we now know invests in Ripple, is on a mission to change the lives of their over 16 million customers. Thailand's oldest bank has partnered with Ripple to help bring the company into the digital age and create SCB Easy, a mobile application that runs on Ripple to deliver instant, low-cost cross-border payments. It's nice to have people that have skin in the game that own parts of Ripple. Then here's another investor, Santander Innoventures. This is the Bank of Santander, their venture capital wing. And look at them. And then we have this from Ripple. Santander launches first mobile app for global payments using Ripple's X Current. They've got skin in the game. They got a reason to deploy this technology. Santander OnePay FX, the first Ripple-enabled mobile app for cross-border payments using X Current, is now available to Santander's retail customers in the UK. And then there's this. This is Standard Chartered Ventures. This is Standard Chartered's bank venture capital wing. And these guys are also investors in Ripple, Standard Chartered. Well, here's a Ripple Insights article. Ripple-powered instant payment services now live with Axis Bank, Rack Bank, and Standard Chartered. And today, let's see what it says. To meet this increasing demand for real-time payment services, these banks, including Standard Chartered, will now use RippleNet to send live, fast, frictionless cross-border payments. Do you see how all this works, folks? And let me show you how else it's working. This was the tweet from February 19th from Brad Garlinghouse. Remember, what's going on is it not only are you going to see nodes that are lighting up at these banks, but we're seeing people that work at Ripple, they spend their time at Ripple, and it's almost like they're then dispatched to places that are now going to use Ripple products and services, okay? So Kahina Van Dyke, who was working at Ripple, is now going to be with Standard Chartered Bank. And what does Brad Garlinghouse say? And she's dispatched to Standard Chartered in a similar way that Miguel Baez was dispatched from the CME group after their investment to go work at Ripple. Are you seeing how all this lays out, folks? Well, anyway, here's the other interesting part. So Brad Garlinghouse, he congratulates her and he says, we're glad you'll only be a node on the network away over at Standard Chartered. In other words, Standard Chartered will be running a node. And guess who else will be running nodes? In my opinion, this is my theory. It's not a question in my mind, though. All of these banks, all the banks that are on RippleNet are going to get their own nodes. This is how they can all trust each other. This is how they all don't have to trust each other. They'll be running nodes. It will be central banks, government entities around the world that are running nodes on this whole network. That's where this is all going, folks. All right, back to our investors. Now we've got Tetragon, folks. This guy I found interesting. He's on the board of directors at Tetragon. His name's David C. O'Leary. Well, look where he worked. David C. O'Leary retired from State Street Corporation in Boston, Massachusetts in 2012, where he was executive vice president, chief administrative officer from 2010 to 2012. He was there at State Street looks like for years and years and years. Now, don't forget who State Street is, folks. State Street is like the first or second largest traditional custodian of like stock certificates and all that stuff. They keep custody of literally trillions of dollars. They're one of the most important companies in the traditional financial markets. And remember, I covered in a video the other day, State Street is one of the largest largest investors in SBI Holdings, which invested in three of the largest custody companies in the world in traditional finance are three of the largest investors in SBI Holdings, which SBI Holdings is the largest outside investor in Ripple. But David O'Leary apparently thought that wasn't good enough. Through this venture capital firm, Tetragon, that he's a part of, he thought that it was a good idea to invest in Ripple as well. I wonder if he learned anything while he was at State Street. And then there's this. This is Hinge Capital, which I'm not really going to go very far into this one. I didn't really find anything that interesting with Hinge Capital. It was previously something else. It was some other name, and I don't remember what it was. I think it was like Venture or something. And then this is another company that's an investor, Wicklow Capital. Dan Tierney is with Wicklow Capital. And the reason I wanted to show you this guy, Wicklow Capital is out of Chicago. All right. Well, Dan is a member, also a member on the board. I think this is the way I'm reading this is right. Dan runs Wicklow Capital. He's also on the Chicago Board of Options Exchange. He's a board member of that. Chicago Board of Options Exchange is what regulates the CME Group, which is where Miguel Baez came from. And the CME Group's venture capital wing is CME Ventures, like I just showed you. They are investors in Ripple. All right. Now, one of the more important of the investors in Ripple is the Digital Currency Group. These guys are invested in every business in blockchain that matters. The key figure here, one of the key figures is Barry Silbert, but the key figure here, and I think the real the board member with the real gunpowder is Glenn Hutchins, who we've talked about before. Glenn Hutchins is the co-founder of Silver Lake. He's also here's the important thing you need to know. He's the Federal Reserve Bank of he serves on the board of AT&T, NASDAQ, and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the Brookings Institution, the Economic Club of New York, where Brad Garlinghouse went and spoke last year. Remember that? Okay, so anyway, he's a big deal, right? We've talked about him a lot. We're going to talk about him some more. So Seagate Technology Venture, their venture capital wing, is also an investor in Ripple, an early investor, right? Well, this is a tweet from Rachel Lee back on July 10th, 2018. Seagate Tech, early investor in Ripple, another overlap of interest with Silver Lake, Glenn Hutchins, Fed New York, BlackRock, and Goldman Sachs also have interest in SBI Group Japan. Central Bank of Norway, also a shareholder of Seagate. Well, here are the top 10 owners of Seagate Technology, which is also invested in Ripple. Fidelity Management, Vanguard Group, ClearBridge, ValueAct, BlackRock, SSGA Funds Management, LSV Asset Management, Two Sigma Advisors, Goldman Sachs, Norges Bank Investment Management, and I'm not sure exactly what this is, but let me see if I can find anything else interesting. Okay, that's all I wanted to show you there. So back to Glenn Hutchins. Remember, and I know I've shown this before, but I'm going to keep showing this. This is Glenn Hutchins, same Glenn Hutchins that's with the Digital Currency Group. Listen up very closely.
Another one of your interests, and,
right.
and you've kind of gotten into that, but we've just seen a huge meltdown over the past 12, 15 months. Are you still a believer?
So if we'd been sitting here together in 2002, we probably were. You would have asked me, the internet. We've just seen this huge meltdown in the last 12 to 15 months. Are you still a believer? Right?
Yep.
And so the answer is yes. Now the digital currency solution is the most important technological advance I've seen since the internet. It has the capacity to do lots more, but it certainly has the capacity to enable us to move anything of value around the world at the speed of light at no cost. It has three components. It has a token of value, which is called the Bitcoin. It has a accounting mechanism, which is called the blockchain. But the most important piece, which is one that people aren't focusing on, is the protocol. The underlying protocol by which we agree to conduct these transactions. So you use a series of protocols every day, and you don't even think about them. You don't think about the internet protocol. You don't think about the simple mail technology protocol. You don't think about the file transfer protocol. You don't think about the high text translation protocol. I can go through them, right? You just make use of the technology, and the protocols make it work. The people who really understand what's going on with digital currencies understand that putting these protocols in place, the blockchain protocol, the Ethereum protocol, the Ripple protocol, and then enabling those protocols to cause transactions to occur. And then those transactions can be defined very broadly as not just moving things of value, but anything that's got an information content, is extraordinarily transformative. The focus on the value of the token is distracting and uninformative.
I believe that what he is saying right there is very simple. I believe that the focus on the prices as you see them on CoinMarketCap right now, are pretty meaningless in the scheme of things. I believe that what he's saying is that the focus on those prices, it means nothing. It's just a distraction. But when all of this actually comes together and there are actually payments and money flows happening, the values that happen as a result of that can't even be calculated on CoinMarketCap are game changers. And I believe that that's why the Barry Silberts and the Novogratz and all these guys see Bitcoin as the one that's not going to have any utility. There's not going to be any money flowing through it for the purpose of payments. And that's because it's too slow. So that's the one that they can focus on for speculative money to go into. I believe that that's what Glenn Hutchins is saying here, but I want to go further with how important Glenn Hutchins is. This is the same guy that was also on stage and literally he's so important. He was literally in this thing. He was talking to the SEC chairman as if he was a schoolboy that knew nothing. Now, he didn't do it in this clip, but this clip's important. So, and this is from Rosen's On the Moon, by the way.
Protocol. And the three of them operate together to create one solution, one integrated solution that has the capacity to revolutionize the way we move things of value around the world. Let me use a railroad analogy to make the point. The token is the equivalent of the boxcar. It's the thing into which you embed something of digital value that needs to be moved from one place to another, from one part of a blockchain to another. The blockchain is the cargo invoice, is the invoice in the cargo manifest. And the rails is the protocol. And you have to think about all three as one integrated solution that enables you to accomplish the purpose of moving anything of value around the world at the speed of light at no cost, the way we talk about email today. People who just talk about blockchain are talking about something very interesting, but it's a piece of enterprise technology that's an advanced database. And a private blockchain unconnected to the global, to the Bitcoin or another digital currency blockchain is the equivalent of the intranet. Mm-hmm. Remember when we had intranets to begin with, where it was really cool, you could do internal communication with people in your own companies, but it wasn't really until those intranets were connected via the internet protocol to other intranets to create the World Wide Web of intranets called the internet, that the world changed. The world is going to change in finance when we connect the private blockchains via the Bitcoin or Ethereum or other protocol to the other blockchains in the world. Have a global blockchain that's the World Wide Web of blockchains that'll fundamentally change the way in which not only do we move value around the world at the speed of light, but also in which we actually fundamentally change the way in which we compute, because it's the fourth computing paradigm I've experienced in my lifetime, the decentralized computing paradigm. That is the vision of where we can really go with this. That's transformational. Now, the first step will be the intranets, mm-hmm. the blockchains, as those get deployed. But that's not the end point. That's just a first step. And go into all that stuff at greater length if you'd like me to. But that's a big.
So he just laid it out perfectly. Right now, we're so early that you're just now seeing the interconnectedness. It's the very beginning of that. That's why when you looked at that chart, and I'll pull it up again, I can never show this too many times. When you pull up, let me pull this chart over to you. When you pull this up and you look at this chart, what he's talking about, here's the timeline, remember? Ripple becomes the international money transfers, the standard for international money transfers between banks. ILP becomes the standard. That's 2017 to 2020. This is where we are. At the very beginning, these solutions start to become interconnected. That's what he's talking about. This is where the world changes right here. This is where the world changes. All right, let me get rid of this. And I want to finish just to stamp this, to drive this point home for you about how important this Glenn Hutchins guy is, and then I'll be done with this video. I told you he's on the New York Federal Reserve Board. This is the Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chair. This is his appointment book, and if you look here, this is Glenn Hutchins. This is from November 6th. This is Glenn Hutchins having a phone call with Jerome Powell. So Jerome Powell, remember, Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chair, is the same guy that told us that they've been working on digital currencies for 2 decades, that the United States has. The world is about to change. And folks, like I've told you before, we're talking about all the money, not some of the money. When all these things have become interconnected, all the money. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe and hit the like button and tell your friends and family. It's about all the money. Thanks for listening.